Becky Lynch spitting fire on the microphone, Vince McMahon alienating his hardcore fanbase, Dave Meltzer interacting with anime avatar types with 12 followers on Twitter. Many things in wrestling are inevitable, but strict adherence to the rulebook most certainly isn't one of them. Wrestling rules are fluid, they tend to chop and change depending on the situation. If it benefits a match or storyline, companies like WWE will conveniently ignore certain regulations and straight up invent others because the business is a work, so why the hell not? Despite all this, there are some absolutely mental rules that tend to stick in this goofy little world. Some of them are particular to certain promotions or cultures, while others are specific storyline guidelines that have just stuck over the years and have now become canon. So, what are they? What are the regulations so nonsensical they make the boogeyman look like a perfectly balanced individual? Let's have a gander. I'm Andy for WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are the 10 oddest rules in wrestling. Number 10, Champion's Advantage. This little chestnut allows champions to retain their championship if they lose a match via countout or DQ, but given the amount of times Michael Cole blurts out the line "champion's advantage" during a title fight, you'd need to have your head in the sand to not know that. Devised in the old NWA territories way back when, it was for a long time an effective way of letting heel champions keep their gold without burning a pinfall or submission by the babyface. But that being said, it has kind of lost all of its power in 2019. Fatigue towards screwy finishes at an all-time high, particularly in WWE. Barely a single show passes without a heel shortcutting their way out of a match. Cowards. Now, it can still be an effective technique, but given the number of gimmicked title matches that occupy pay-per-view time these days, many of which include a no DQ stipulation anyway, you have to question the importance of Champion's Advantage in the modern era. Number 9, Royal Rumble loopholes. So, this one might be cheating a bit because it's more a lack of rules rather than an odd rule itself, but seriously, how did WWE get away with allowing a loophole that essentially allows wrestlers to get away with doing absolutely nothing in the Royal Rumble slip for so long? Want to do well in a Royal Rumble? Well, cool. Just hang about for half an hour on the outside, wait until everyone else has been eliminated, then pick the bones. It worked for Vince McMahon in 1999 and continues to be a staple heel tactic at WWE's signature January event. Now, it is a super effective way to generate heat, but it does make the whole match a lot less realistic. Why should anyone be able to get an advantage simply by rolling under the bottom rope, taking a breather, and, let's be honest, out? Once you're in, you should be in. Number 8. 3 strikes and you're out. With the advent of NXT UK and all these great indie companies on the go, it's safe to say that British wrestling has evolved a fair bit since the 1940s. Back then, the sport was going through a heavy period of scrutiny. It had been banned in London for its supposedly lawless nature, leading to a revamp of the rules in order to help improve public perception and get rid of that nasty, grubby image. Admiral Lord Mount Evans oversaw a bunch of different guideline additions, including one that stated that anyone caught cheating would be given a warning. After 2 warnings, they'd be 1 away from getting DQ'd and losing the match, and as wacky as it sounds, the 3 strikes and you're out rule was a fantastic success. It helped build great drama and tension throughout the match while also maintaining the illusion of a real sport with strictly observed rules. Anything from a closed fist to an attack after the bell constituted an infraction, and it became invaluable in building matches with crowds. Imagine little Rod Zapata telling Braun Strowman that he's been a naughty boy for smashing someone through a table. Ridiculous, but kind of funny. Number 7. Escaping the cage. The cage match is supposed to be one of the most brutal and attritional stipulations around. It's a place where 2 wrestlers who despise each other can finally get their pound of flesh, with the slippery heel given no escape and nowhere to run. Unless, of course, they just waddle over to the door, politely ask the referee to open it, and then skip out. That is a super lame way to conclude what used to be one of wrestling's most feared match types. Now, climbing out of the cage does make a little bit more sense, but only for the heel. You want these wrestlers to look like wimpy little cowards and weasels, so them technically winning a match by running away is perfect for that, but the babyface might as well be committing credibility suicide every time they even think about winning the match by escaping the cage. Number 6. Removing the mask. The cultural and historical significance of the mask in Mexican wrestling cannot be overstated. Many are decorated to reflect the characters and performers themselves, their legacy, and what they represent. Some go untouched for decades, and back in the day, luchadors were so dedicated to their craft that they'd even keep these bloody things on in public, protecting their identity. That is dedication. All of this is why it's illegal to attempt to remove an opponent's mask during a match in Mexico and around the world when those rules are applied. It's supposed to be an automatic DQ. Where American wrestling developed the cage match as the ultimate feud blow-off stipulation, Lucha Libre's equivalent is the Lucha de Apuestas, pardon my pronunciation, or wager match, where combatants are so committed to the fight, they'll bet their mask or hair, if they've already lost their mask, on the outcome. This has led to some of the most heated and memorable matches of all time. But unfortunately, it just doesn't quite carry the same weight in the United States. But seriously, watch more Lucha, it's pretty damn awesome. Number 5. The Freebird Rule. The New Day have brought the Freebird Rule back to international prominence over the past few years, with Big E, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods all taking it in turns to defend their various tag team titles despite, the small fact that they're free men and they only have 2 belts. This rule was, of course, made famous by the fabulous Freebirds way back when. The three-man stable of Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Roberts told Georgia Championship Wrestling and World Class Championship Wrestling up in the 1980s. And while many still believe that the Midnight Express actually came up with this rule, it's dubbed the Freebird Rule, so let's not complicate it. Number 4. The Power of Attorney Rule. So this one was only ever utilised once, and if you know when that was, you get 100 Internet Wrestling Nerd points. Harlem Heat were WCW's highest profile tag team in the late 90s, holding the tag team titles 10 times before splitting in 1999. In early 1998, Stevie Ray had to take several months off through injury, and that's when Booker T, his partner, went on to enjoy significant success as a single star. Now those roles were reversed later in the year, but rather than have Booker T vacate his WCW Television Championship when he became injured, they had Stevie represent him and defend the belt via power of attorney. Now this went pretty well for Harlem Heat. Ray defended Booker's belt 11 times before eventually dropping it to Chris Jericho in August, although he did often resort to good old champion's advantage. Number 3. The Outlaw Rule. There are a lot of crazy rules when it comes to tag team wrestling in WWE. You have to be in that corner holding the stupid wee rope to be tagged, you can only interrupt pins a certain amount of times, and you only have a few seconds to execute double team moves, etc. etc. One that rarely comes into play is the Outlaw Rule, which, get this, was designed to prevent a wrestler from winning the match by pinning their own tag partner. This is exactly what happened on a June 1998 episode of Raw. The New Age Outlaws were defending their belts against the LOD 2000 and Skull and 8-Ball, with the stipulation states three-way bout would only allow 2 wrestlers in the ring at the same time. So the Outlaws did what DX always did, and screwed around playing the fool, before Road Dogg and Billy Gunn ended up tagged in at the same time, and were technically therefore wrestling each other. Naturally, these duplicitous rogues concocted a plan. Road Dogg laid down, and Gunn pinned him for a quick 3 count to retain the belt and cause much scandal. Fortunately for WWE officials, the loophole was closed the following week, but it was a brief stroke of genius from the Outlaws. Number 2. The 24/7 Rule. No wrestler has ever suffered from little man syndrome quite like the late great Crash Holly. Billing himself as a super heavyweight, the 5'8" scrapper was always trying to prove something to big cousin Bob, particularly when he won the WWE Hardcore Championship from Test in February 2000. In an attempt at separating himself from the pack, Crash started calling himself the greatest hardcore champion of all time and vowed to defend his belt 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to prove it. Now, what followed was an outrageously fun gimmick dictating that the belt could be won or lost at any time, as long as the challenger had an official referee with them to count the three. Holly ended up defending his belts in all kinds of wacky places, from sleeping in his hotel room to walking through the airport, and even circuses and amusement parks. Such was the magic of the hardcore title. This rule is largely why Raven is technically the most decorated champion in WWE history, having captured the hardcore title an astonishing 27 times, most of which lasted only a couple of minutes. It's also how randos like Headbanger Thrasher, Terry Runnels, and, quote-unquote, as listed on WWE.com, Godfather's Ho, got the belt. Number 1. Texas Tornado Tough Man Rule. Texas Tornado rules are, technically speaking, just a gimmick name for an ordinary tag rule, whereby instead of having to tag each other in, all members of the participating teams are allowed to be in the ring at once. Indie promotions like Ohio's AIW go one step further with the Texas Tornado Tough Man rule. It states that matches proceed per normal under tornado regulations until one team gets a pin. Then, the man who made the pin chooses one guy from the opposing team to be beaten to a pulp by their opponents for a full minute. When that minute expires, if the victim can't get up for a standing 10 count, his whole team loses. But if they get up, the match continues until the next pinfall, and the pattern repeats until somebody can't get up in time. It's pretty damn insane, and has been expanded to include 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 matches as well. Theoretically, you could go into triple threat style rules for maximum carnage if you're a bloody sadist.